The broadcast of the regular meeting of the Heritage Preservation Commission will now begin.
Good afternoon. Welcome to this live broadcast of our virtual meeting of the July 28th, 2020 regular meeting of the Minneapolis Heritage Preservation Commission. This meeting includes the remote participation of members as authorized under Minnesota Statute Section 13D.021 due to the declared local health pandemic. For the record, my name is Madeline Sundberg and I serve as chair of the Minneapolis Heritage Preservation Commission. I will now call this meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll so we may verify the presence of a quorum.
Bjornberg.
Present.
Fritz.
Present.
Howard.
Present.
Johnson.
Present.
Mack.
Present.
Sandbolt.
Present.
Stady. Sundberg.
Present.
Van Dyke.
Here.
And one more time, Stady. That's 8 members.
Thank you. Let the record reflect we do have quorum. With that, we will proceed to our agenda, a copy of which is posted for public access to the city's legislative information management system, which is available at lims.minneapolismn.gov. Our first order of business is to adopt the agenda for this meeting. We will work from the agendas that are available online. I will go through the agenda and sort out the items for which items will be continued, which items will be discussed, and which items will be put on the consent agenda. So item number 4 is 110 Fifth Avenue Southeast, Ward 3, Certificate of Appropriateness. That item will be discussed. Item number 5, Ivy Zenith 32nd Conservation District, Ward 13, the Conservation District Establishment will be discussed. And item number 6, 1505 Central Avenue Northeast, Ward 1, the National Register nomination will be discussed. So the proposed agenda, item 4, 110 Fifth Avenue Southeast, item number 5, the Ivy Zenith Conservation District, item 6, 1505 Central Avenue Northeast, will all have staff presentation, public comment, commission discussion, and action. Commissioners, may I have a motion to approve the proposed agenda?
Bjornberg, so moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Bjornberg. Is there a second?
Fritz, second.
Thank you, Commissioner Fritz. Any discussion? With that, I will ask the clerk to call the roll on the motion.
Bjornberg.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Mack.
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry. Johnson, did you reply there?
I did say aye. I'm sorry. I'm calling in and having some technical difficulties.
Okay. Well, thank you for hanging in there. I'll continue with the roll vote. Sandbolt.
Aye.
Sundberg.
Aye.
Van Dyke.
Aye.
That's 8 yeas.
And I think Commissioner Stady has joined us.
Yes, but I don't think that it was public until you just announced it. So
Okay.
Thank you for doing that. And Stady, do you have a vote on this? The agenda. Okay.
Yes.
So
Aye.
thank you.
Thank you.
So that's 9 yeas. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. The agenda is approved. Our next order of business will be to approve the minutes from our July 14th, 2020 meeting. May I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved, Mac.
Thank you, Commissioner Mack. Is there a second?
Sandvolt, second.
Thank you, Commissioner Sandbolt. Any discussion? With that, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll on the motion.
Turn this on. Pardon me, folks. I thought I turned that on. Bjornberg.
Aye.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye.
Johnson. Mack.
Aye.
Sandbolt.
Aye.
Aye.
Sundberg.
Aye.
Van Dyke.
Aye.
That's 8 yeas.
Thank you. The minutes are approved. Before I open the hearing to public comments, let me summarize the process for conducting the public hearing in this virtual format. The process of the public hearing is as follows. First, we will act on any items to be withdrawn, then we'll act on any items to be continued, then the consent agenda. But since our items are all discussion, I will open the public hearing and we will invite public comment. I'll be taking speakers in the order they pre-registered. If any, speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. We ask that after your name is called, you state your name and address for the record and then proceed to your comments. After we've completed the list of any pre-registered speakers, we'll see if there are any other speakers in the queue who may have called in. In order to activate your microphones, you'll need to press *6 on your phone. So again, we'll take the list of pre-registered speakers in order and then open the floor to any other speakers who may be in the queue. Please remember to state your name and address for the record before your comments and press *6 to activate your microphone. After public comments are complete, I will close the hearing. The commissioners will deliberate and act on the application before us. Our first item then is item 4, 110 Fifth Avenue Southeast, Ward 3, the Certificate of Appropriateness. The staff report is presented by Rob Skolecki.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Rob Skolecki. I'm a city planner in the Historic Preservation section of CPED. Today, I'm presenting a Master Sign Plan Certificate of Appropriateness application for the property located at 110 Fifth Avenue Southeast in the St. Anthony Falls Historic District. Next slide, please. The building is a contributing resource in the St. Anthony Falls Historic District. The original west or northwest portion of the building was completed by 1885 for the Union Railway Storage Company, with additions that were made in 1892, 1917, and 1939, which were all during the period of significance for the district, which is 1848 to 1941. Another addition was completed in 1948 to the building by the National Soap and Chemical Company. Since 2017, rehabilitation work has taken place at the building. The applicant has included information in their application that shows the property is currently undergoing review by the State Historic Preservation Office, as well as the National Park Service for rehabilitation tax credits. Next slide, please. The applicant is proposing to establish a master sign plan that consists of 8 signs for the property. 7 of these are proposed for traditional primary street-facing north and west elevations, with 1 sign proposed for the rear south rail corridor elevation. The building is currently proposed to be used as a multiple tenant office building with 8 detailed tenant spaces. The following signs, as you see in this plan here, as proposed for this master sign plan, are sign 1, which is an externally illuminated canopy sign to be installed on the overhang that shelters the main entry on the north elevation. The sign will read Switch House, established 1885, and will be aluminum with hand-painted script. Sign 2 is a ground monument sign that is 20 inches wide and 60 inches tall with a concrete base, mounted aluminum lettering. The sign will include typescript that reads switch house, as well as the building's address and 6 mounted aluminum spaces to identify future tenants. This ground sign will be externally illuminated by a spotlight at the base. Sign 3 is a placard wall sign on the north elevation near the entry closest to the pedestrian right-of-way on this elevation. To be used by a future tenant, the sign is going to be non-illuminated, less than 2 square feet in area. Sign 4 is proposed to be an aluminum raceway wall sign on the west elevation, which is proposed to be less than 27 feet in length and 27 inches in height, to be installed in a traditional sign ban location pending future tenant use here. A painted wall sign is proposed for the historic location on the west elevation above the 3rd-story windows to the south side of the elevation. And that's proposed to be 39 feet in length and 3 feet in height and painted directly on the masonry. Lastly, signs 6, 7, and 8 are all uniform in design and will be externally illuminated, projecting signs with vinyl letters for future tenant use. The signs will be 12 square feet in area, with 2 of them installed on the west elevation near the entries and 1 installed on the south elevation near an entry. Staff found that the proposed number of 8 total signs, comprised of wall signs, projecting signs, and 1 ground sign, are appropriate for the property's master sign plan, given the following. The building is historically comprised of multiple additions that create a visual difference in design and massing. The proposed signs are in locations that are appropriate for a building that communicates this historic and proposed locations, and will not create visual clutter on publicly visible elevations. Also, the proposed signs are influenced by and give reference to historic and traditional sign locations for the property. And also the building is in the process of rehabilitation, as mentioned. So utilizing the proposed signage for an 8-tenant commercial building with this number of signs allows for greater identification and wayfinding options for the property, while minimizing any potential impacts to the building's integrity. The proposed master sign plan is largely compatible and is appropriate for a multiple tenant building with 2 traditional street facing elevations. Historically, the property has included various signs at all elevations, and the applicants detail this in their application. While the majority of the proposed signs are consistent with both the Heritage Preservation Commission's design guidelines for on-premise signs and awnings, as well as the St. Anthony Falls Historic District guidelines, there are some conflicts that exist with these guidelines. Next slide, please. As noted in the memo sent to commissioners, sign 1 was incorrectly determined to be a roof sign in the staff report. Following evaluation of additional materials submitted by the applicant, which you can see here on the right, to clarify the placement and positioning of the proposed sign 1, and upon determination made by the zoning administrator, this sign should actually be classified as a canopy sign. However, canopy signs are not allowed according to the sign guidelines, and this is also detailed in the memo that was sent to commissioners. So the current staff recommendations to move the proposed sign to a wall or projecting location remain, as the applicant did not submit evidence in their application that would allow staff to recommend approval for a canopy sign to be installed at the property based on building condition, building orientation, historic precedents, and or exceptional design for this location. The proposed sign is of appropriate materials, medium, lighting, and size to comply with the sign guidelines for, or as a wall sign, I should say. As such, staff recommends that condition 1 be modified as written in the memo that was submitted to the commissioners to reflect that the sign is a canopy sign, which is not subject to the same regulations as a roof sign per zoning code. And I will restate this condition change at the end with recommendations as well. Next slide, please. The ground sign, which is sign 2, is appropriate in scale, dimensions, and message per the sign design guidelines. It will be easily reversible. It will not obscure significant architectural features. A ground sign was previously approved at the northeast corner of the property in 2015. The applicant details that concrete is a compatible material for the sign, given that concrete is visible at the foundation of the property, and staff agrees that this is an acceptable material for a ground sign at this location. Next slide, please. Sign 3, which is not pictured here, is a small wall sign. It's the placard sign that's appropriate in material, dimension, and location for the subject property that will be on the north elevation. The proposed raceway letter sign that you see here is sign 4, and it follows the traditional sign ban location based on pictorial evidence on the right. The location of the wall sign is appropriate given that the photographic evidence shows that this is a traditional location for this addition segment of the building for signage. Next slide, please. The proposed painted wall sign, which is sign 5 in the historic sign ban, while it's historically accurate in location, medium, and size, is proposed to cover up a portion of the existing, although heavily faded ghost sign that reads Union Railway Storage Company. All 4 of this warehouse addition elevations actually show faded ghost signs in this location, as well as what appear to be some between window bands on lower stories even. So as such, the St. Anthony Falls Historic District guidelines, as well as the sign guidelines, do not recommend that historic signage be damaged by painting over, especially with ghost signs. They encourage the maintenance and restoration of existing historic signs, and also the sign guidelines state that historic signs would not be counted towards a total number of signs allowed for a property. So staff is recommending that this not be approved, and that is also going to be restated in the conditions. Next slide, please. The proposed projecting signs 6, 7, and 8 follow the sign design guidelines for size, materials, and locations, all being near entryways. So even based on photographic evidence here, you see historic signage locations too, at least for one of them. The 3 projecting signs are, as stated before, of uniform dimensions and materials and will be used for future tenant identification. Next slide, please. I've included here the final slides are just elevations that show the exact placement of where these signs are located on the north and west elevations. But with that, the Department of Community Planning and Economic Development recommends that the Heritage Preservation Commission adopt staff findings for the application by Quentin Collette and Megan Elliott of New History for the property located at 110 5th Avenue Southeast in the St. Anthony Falls Historic District. Staff recommends to approve the certificate of appropriateness to allow for a master sign plan subject to the following conditions. Number 1, which has been changed given the memo that was sent to staff, or at least recommended changed. The proposed canopy sign, which is sign 1, is not allowed per the design guidelines for on-premise signs and awnings. The sign should be moved to a wall or projecting location on this elevation. Dimensions of the design, dimensions and design may be altered, but the sign shall comply with the design guidelines for on-premise signs and awnings otherwise. Condition 2, the proposed channel letter wall sign, sign number 4, shall be no taller than 2 feet in height to accurately fit within the traditional sign ban area of the linear colored bricks, as well as to comply with the 24-inch maximum sign design guideline requirements for wall sign. Condition number 3, the proposed painted wall sign, sign 5, is not permitted as part of the master sign plan, as it would cover up and damage the existing historic ghost sign at this location. Appropriate maintenance and restoration of the existing ghost signs on this elevation or any of the elevations of the building shall be included as part of the master sign plan, and if pursued, approvable through a certificate of no change. Condition 4, all signs shall be installed in compliance with installation guidelines established in the design guidelines for on-premise signs and awnings. In condition 5, a total of 8 signs shall be allowed at the subject property as part of the master sign plan, with 7 allocated for locations on or near the traditional street facing north and west elevations. Historic signs are not included, are not to be included in the total number of allowed signs for the property. And as well for sign 6, just a standard condition of approval, I wanted to note that there was a slight mistake in the date. A 1-year extension for the request can be made in writing no later than July 28th, 2022, which is 2 years following today. So I ask that that would be reflected as well in the change of conditions. But other than that, I'm available for questions as staff, but I do understand that the applicants are here and would like to speak as well. Thank you.
Thank you for your report. Commissioners, are there any questions for staff? Seeing none at this time, I will open the public hearing for this item. I believe Megan Elliott is on the line as the applicant. Megan, can you press *6?
Yes, good afternoon, Commissioners. This is Megan Elliott. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So again, Megan Elliott with New History. I'm going to introduce who we have on the line with me today for our team, then give you a brief overview of how we got here and why we're here, and then we are going to ask for 2 modifications to the conditions. So again, Megan Elliott with New History. I'm here with Quentin Paulette, also with New History, and Pete Dinovic, founding principal with Buell Investors. Pete, can you say something so we can verify if you can hear as well?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, great, thank you. So Pete Dinovic, founding principal with Buell Investors, they are the owner and developer for this project. So again, I'm going to go through a brief overview of how we got here, why we're here, and what we're requesting of the HPC to consider today. So how we got here, I think some of you know this has been a long road to revitalizing this building. I personally have been working on this building since 2010, and at that time I was serving on the board of the nonprofit organization known as the Soap Factory. And then after serving a few terms on the board, I moved into an advisory capacity for the organization. In 2016, as some of you might remember, the organization took on a massive revitalization project for the building. And the intention was to reuse the building for gallery, artists in residence, and some restaurant and retail space. That project did unfortunately result in the organization no longer being around. It went bankrupt. The building went into foreclosure, and there was a period of about a year where the building sat both vacant and in a state of, I'll say, partial construction with open windows, open masonry, and some, I'd say, insecure conditions. In about 2018, Buell came into the project. They were approached by several different parties, including New History, as a group that had the capacity and the right approach to make a project like this work again. So they did step in to salvage the project and revitalize the buildings and made a commitment to maintain and restore the building, maintain the project team that had been working on the building, including the contractor, the architect, New History, paid off a mountain of liens to make this work, and then have been currently working with and discussing Soap Factory with the Soap Factory advocates and past artists ways to integrate some of that former history into the project. So we're here today because we have requested a master sign plan. The reason we put together a master sign plan is that this is a kind of a hard to describe building, both geometrically, physically. Frankly, it's hard to find the front door. So rather than come to you piecemeal with every tenant sign, now that we've moved forward with a multi-tenant project, we have been working with staff and appreciate Rob's guidance on this for a master sign plan where we could come to you with one signage package. We understand all the conditions. We'd like to talk about specifically condition 1, which is with respect to the canopy sign. We understand that canopy signs are not in meeting with the design guidelines. However, we're asking for this kind of canopy sign because it is a simple, practical, and appropriate solution for people to find the front door. And it's a canopy that's not historic. We've brought it to you in front of the HPC. It's in a location of a former canopy, and it is just intended to, again, help people find the front door. We think the solution for mounting it on the canopy, not on the building, externally lighting it, choosing appropriate signage character, I'll say, and then putting it in a location that doesn't have an impact on the historic district, we think is in keeping with the intent of the design guidelines. And then we also would like to ask for consideration on condition 2, which is with respect to sign 4. Staff is recommending a change from a 27-inch height to a 24-inch height. We chose 27 inches because that is the actual dimension from soldier course to soldier course, the top of the bottom soldier course to the bottom of the soldier course above. And so we selected that dimension to match this specific building. And then all of the other conditions we are happy to accept and don't take any exceptions to those. But before I move on, Pete, do you want to add anything to my comments, and then we'll open it up for any questions from the commission or staff?
Sure. I think, commissioners, I appreciate you taking the time to hear us out on these items. This has been more of a labor of love than I think I even knew it would be going into it, and we went into it with a real earnest desire to find ways to honor the history here, find ways to enhance the presence of art that has been that the building has been known to house, and to that end had offered the SOAP organization a very cheap rent to try and get their feet back under them. I think in the context of them having elected to dissolve and working in what is clearly, as we're all experiencing, unusual circumstances, it is critically important that as we think about a person's individual interaction with the built environment, that we're doing our best to kind of try and enhance that experience. Part of enhancing that for us in the context of the uses that will find a home in this building is to really have an impact on wayfinding. And in this particular project, that's all the more important because of the configuration of multiple entrances that are kind of historically located around the building, and understanding that our main entrance, as the plans had originally been drawn and we stepped in to pay off liens and progress with that, as Megan had mentioned, contemplated the area that we have this canopy sign noted as being the main entrance. And so given the amount of distance that it's off the street, and given the relatively new canopy that's being installed, we're hopeful that for all the reasons that Megan had mentioned, that you'll consider that and consider a modification to the recommended approvals, such that would be allowed. We care a lot about it. We're excited to have it be kind of a productive building in the community and neighborhood.
Thank you for your comments. Commissioners, are there any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Howard.
I have two questions. The first is pretty simple. I'm just curious if the signs have been reviewed yet by the National Park Service, since this is a tax credit project. And the second one is in relation specifically to sign number 4. By the guidelines, 24 inches in height is allowed, and I understand why you're asking for 27, because that's the distance between the two bands. The only photograph that we have of signage in this area actually shows something that looks like it's even less than 24 inches tall, and that's the sign, the photograph from the 1970s. And so I'm curious as to why you think that extra 3 inches is going to be really useful there, especially when we have documentation showing an even smaller sign.
Sure. So thank you, Commissioner Howard, for your question. I'm going to have Quentin Collette answer your question about the status of the National Park Service review of the signage, and then I will just briefly respond to your question about the height of the sign band. You're right that historically there have been the signs that we have photo documentation of, and that's not to say we have all of the photos, but the one that we have shows a sign in that sign band location of sign 4. It is of a height lower than 27 inches. the height that we've specified, the 27, is intended to be a maximum, but that the sign band could match the current dimension of the building, which is from top of bottom soldier course to bottom of the top soldier course. So it's not to say that any sign will be 27 inches, but that we could go up to 27 inches in height for a future tenant, which has yet to be identified. With that, Quentin, I'll turn it over to you to answer about the National Park Service, and then Pete, if you have anything to add after Quentin as well. So go ahead, Quentin.
Thank you for your question. And to give you some additional background information, the soap factory rehabilitation project is in the process of being certified for historic tax credit. All the exterior signage that is part of this master sign plan was part of an amendment that was submitted to SHPO 2 weeks ago. It will be reviewed by both SHPO and NTS.
And then Pete, do you have anything else to add to that answer?
No, I really don't.
Okay, thank you.
I think that answers the questions. Thank you, Megan.
Are there any other questions for the applicant? I don't see any. Thank you for all your comments. I think with that, I will open up the rest of the public hearing. So again, we'll take the list of pre-registered speakers in order and then open the floor to any other speakers who may be in the queue. Just a reminder to provide your name and address before making your comments. And when recognized, please press *6 on your phone to activate your microphone so we can hear you. And it looks like the next person in the queue is Mally Earl. Are you on the line? Press *6, Mally. Checking with the clerk. Do we know if Mally Earl is on the line? Oh, their number is not on the line. Okay. Well, is there anyone else wishing to speak for or against this application from the public? I don't see any. So with that, I will close the public hearing. And commissioners, let's discuss. What is everybody's thoughts on the conditions the applicant has concerns with? Commissioner Howard.
You might have guessed from my questions that I am a little concerned about the 27-inch on sign number 4. I'm not seeing justification for it. And our guidelines say specifically 24 inches. And without that additional justification, I'm having a tough time, especially when we have photo documentation of one sign that actually shows less than 24 inches tall. Obviously, that's a 1970s photo. Goodness knows what else was there over time. If we had more documentation that might show that something of that height would be appropriate, I wouldn't feel so strongly about that. The canopy sign, I understand that canopy signs are not allowed per our guidelines. That's going to be a very difficult entry to find in the building, so I could go either way on the canopy sign. I appreciate staff comments on it, and I appreciate their following the sign guidelines and saying that. I do think that getting into that building is a challenge from a wayfinding perspective.
Thank you, Commissioner Howard. I think I have to agree, having visited this building many times as it was the soap factory, that front door can be a little difficult to find. And so realizing that staff did do good analysis on the signs, but I guess I'm feeling like I would be more accepting of the canopy sign as well. Whereas the 24-inch sign band, I think, makes a lot of sense to me. And I agree that I didn't see a real reason to give the extra 3 inches. Are there other commissioners who have thoughts on these items?
I've forgotten how to raise my hand, sorry.
That's okay, Commissioner Mack.
Other than making myself visible, I agree. I think the arguments for the canopy sign are persuasive in this case. It's kind of an unusual situation that we could certainly distinguish from others, and we should give it some help in making this work. So I would agree with that.
Thank you, Commissioner Mack. Commissioners, any other thoughts? Or a motion, perhaps?
I guess I should make a motion since I'm the one who started the questions. I would move to approve the certificate of appropriateness to allow a master sign plan subject to the following conditions, and then taking the conditions 2 through 7 as outlined in our agenda, but striking condition 1, both from the agenda and from the memo. So that would allow the canopy sign.
Thank you, Commissioner Howard. Can I make I don't know if I'm allowed to make a friendly amendment. Condition number 6 should be July 28th, 2022 instead of 2023.
Yes, it should be. And I'll put that in there as well. So taking conditions 2 through 7 with the 2020 in number 6.
Thank you.
I would second that.
Thank you, Commissioner Mack. Are those conditions clear for the clerk that we're striking condition 1 and changing the date in condition 6?
Yes, that's
okay.
clear. Thank you for checking.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll on the motion.
Bjornberg.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye.
Okay, continuing on. Mac.
Oh, I'm sorry. Aye.
Sandbolt.
Aye.
Aye.
Drake.
Sorry, did you say Van Dyke?
Yes, I did.
Sorry, the sound's cutting in and out for me. Sorry about that. But my response is aye.
Thank you. Sundberg.
Aye.
That is 8 yeas.
And Johnson's aye too. Sorry, you cut
Oh.
out and I'm cutting out. I apologize.
No, thank you. So that's 9 yeas. Thank you.
Thank you. That motion passes. The applicant may speak to staff about next steps tomorrow. Our second item number 5, is the Ivy Zenith 32nd Conservation District, Ward 13. This is about the Conservation District establishment, and the staff report will be presented by John Smalley.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. My name is John Smalley, and I'm very pleased to be before you this evening to brief you on the Ivy Zenith 32nd Conservation District Plan. Located at the intersection of Ivy Lane, Zenith Avenue South, and 32nd Street West in the West Calhoun neighborhood. Slide 2, please. On July 1st, 2019, Meg Forney submitted a complete initiation application to the City of Minneapolis Department of Community Planning and Economic Development for the proposed Ivy Zenith 32nd Conservation District. After completing an initial review, CPED recommended to the Heritage Preservation Commission on September 17, 2019, that the properties appeared to exhibit both of the establishment criteria found in Section 599.720 of the Heritage Preservation Regulations. Next slide, please. The Heritage Preservation Commission adopted CPED's findings and called for a conservation district plan and design guidelines to be initiated. However, the HPC did eliminate one property from the northwest corner of the district at the applicant's request. Next slide, please. 24 of 25 remaining property owners support the proposed establishment. Past surveys of the area, to include the 2012 Southwest Light Rail Transitway Section 106 review and a 2005 City of Minneapolis Reconnaissance Level Survey, did not identify properties within the proposed conservation district as worthy of further research to determine if they're eligible for local designation as a historic district or as landmarks. Following the HPC's September 2019 initiation of the Conservation District Plan and Design Guidelines, staff began working to develop a plan by assessing the district's qualifications as identified in the application through visual inspection of the properties, as well as data gathering and analysis. CPED staff met with residents in the neighborhood at the Bakken Museum in December 2019 to clarify the notable attributes identified in the application. From January through May 2020, staff developed and internally vetted several draft plans, none of which recommended district establishment. For this reason, staff did not develop design guidelines before sending the plan to property owners, the State Historic Preservation Office, and the City Planning Commission for comment in May 2020. I'll get back to those comments in a moment, but I'd like to start with public comments. We've received just over 200 public comments on the proposal. While 81 letters supported establishment of the Conservation District, 102 letters advocated denial of that establishment. All but 4 of these comment letters were submitted prior to the HPC's September 17, 2019 initiation hearing. Of the 4 letters received since the district was initiated, 2 supported the district, 1 opposed it, and 1 offered design guideline ideas. All of these are included in Appendix L of the Conservation District Plan that you have received this evening. Next slide, please. The district does not appear to meet both of the establishment criteria contained in Heritage Preservation Regulations Section 599.720, which are considered in determining whether properties are eligible to be in a conservation district. In terms of Criterion 1, the proposed district does meet this standard, being centered upon the intersection of Zenith Avenue South and 32nd Street West, and including all corner lots at this intersection. Criterion 2 requires 75% of properties embody notable attributes common to the district. Specifically, distinctive characteristics of an architectural or engineering type or style or method of construction, and a landscape design or development pattern distinguished by quality of design or detail, innovation, rarity, or uniqueness, or which may include scale that creates a cohesive, identifiable setting. The proposal does not appear to meet Criterion 2A. While a variety of 20th century architectural styles, Midwestern architectural styles, are represented in the district, none are high-style examples. Under Criterion 2B, the initiation application notes that the proposed district possesses houses close to the street. Oh, excuse me, if you could advance to the next slide, please. Thank you. The initiation application notes that the proposed district possesses houses close to the street, small front yards activated by gardens, sitting areas, or little libraries, small and dense lots, modest size, front porches, decks, or patios, tree-shaded lots, a lake cottage aesthetic, minimal impacts by driveways, garages, and fences, representative history of Midwestern 20th century architectural styles, and pedestrian orientation and scale. Next slide, please. Staff agrees with some of these assertions, but in very few of these categories do at least 75% of the properties possess the attributes in question. In those categories where district properties do meet the minimum 75% threshold, staff does not find the attributes notable enough to warrant additional protection beyond those afforded by current zoning and building codes. In terms of comments from the State Historic Preservation Office and City Planning Commission, in a letter dated July 14th, 2020, the State Historic Preservation Office concurred with the staff recommendation and did not recommend the subject properties be established as a conservation district, stating the properties do not embody distinctive characteristics of an architectural style, and in many cases, houses have undergone alterations that have impacted the integrity of the original design. The City Planning Commission reviewed the proposed conservation district on July 9th and recommended in a 5-0 vote that the request to establish this district be denied. In making this decision, the commissioners noted that this area is a prime location for transit-oriented development, that the properties in question have no historic value, and that this establishment would exempt a neighborhood from having to comply with a comprehensive plan, which staff analysis concludes this proposal does not comply with. For these reasons, CPED recommends that Heritage Preservation Commission adopt staff findings and recommend to deny the establishment of the Ivy Zenith 32nd Conservation District. I'm available for any questions you may have, and I know the applicant would like to make a brief presentation as well.
Thank you, John. Are there any questions for staff? Commissioner Howard.
Thank you, Dr. Smoley, for that presentation and for the really thorough report that you've presented before us. I have one question, and it has to do with the consistency with adopted plans and policies. You state in your report that the establishment of a conservation district in this location is at odds with the city's ability to deliver on the comprehensive plan goals of eliminating disparities, complete neighborhoods, climate change resilience, more residents and jobs, and affordable and accessible housing. You go on to talk about various policies within the comprehensive plan, including policies 1, 2, 3, 38, and 80. I'm curious as to why the two policies that we do have that actually mention conservation districts were not included in that assessment. And if you truly believe that any conservation district, or is it just this conservation district that doesn't meet the comprehensive plan goals?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Howard, thank you for the question. Staff believes that this particular conservation district does not meet the establishment criteria and the comprehensive plan. That does not mean that other conservation districts are, patently unable to meet those standards. The conservation district policies in the comprehensive plan identify the fact that a conservation district program is warranted, is valued. And so we did not focus our analysis in that particular area. To be frank, the vast majority of comments we received tended to deal with the land use policies of the comprehensive plan relative to this area in particular. While the current and comprehensive plan maintains the area's urban neighborhood land use, future land use category, the new comprehensive plan, Minneapolis 2040, includes a built form district that has been identified as Transit 10. Specifically, this is identified as an area suitable for transit-oriented development from 2 to 10 stories. So that's why our analysis focused most heavily upon those land use policies.
Thank you very much, Dr. Smoley.
Thank you, Commissioner Howard. Are there other questions for staff? I don't see any at this time. Thanks, John. So it sounds like the applicant is on the line. If so, could you press, I'll open the public hearing. And if you could press *6. Yes, there you are.
Yes. Can you hear me? Oh, thank you. Thank you. Okay. Yes, this is Meg Forney, the applicant and everything. Thank you for the opportunity to speak regarding this application. A conservation district is quantifiable. This conservation district process this past year has taught us that. Drafted by my neighbors and myself, the criteria used for this application is difficult to quantify. Morphing the data staff has gathered here is criteria that is quantifiable, and I ask the Heritage Preservation Commission to consider these modifications tonight. Slide 1, please. I'm sorry, I can't see, so I hope that it's up. So I would like you to consider as the criteria setback, structure height, lot sizes, and lastly, street width. A conservation district is defined by being contiguous and compact. That has been established. Also, that 75% of the properties embody notable attributes common to the district. A landscape design or development pattern distinguished by quality of design or detail, innovation, rarity, or uniqueness, or which may include scale that creates a cohesive, identifiable setting. The criteria we are suggesting to segue to establishes a development pattern and a cohesive, identifiable setting. Under criterion 2B, the initiation application notes that the proposed district possesses, as already been indicated, houses close to the street, small front yards activated by gardens, sitting areas or little libraries, small, dense lots. Modest size, front porches, decks and patios, tree-shaded lots, lake cottage aesthetic, minimal impact by driveways, garages, and fences, representative history of Midwestern 20th century architectural styles, and pedestrian orientation and scale. I've been a realtor for over 40 years, and I've always found it fascinating that one of the largest financial decisions buyers make, that of purchasing a home, is based on emotions. Does the house sing to them? Do they envision themselves in it? Where will they put the Christmas tree? I can always tell when the property is sold when I see that glint in my client's eyes. This is home. It's not a quantifiable decision. Oh, they will find logic in the decision making, but the initial response is visceral, emotional. My overall experience has been a house is sold emotionally, not quantifiably. Well, my neighbors and I set forth criteria with that same emotion, using criteria that sings to us. It was not quantifiable. What has been lacking is what is measurable. What is the scale? Thus, we suggest altering the stated criteria. Grouping the highly unquantifiable criteria of houses close to the street, small front yards, activated by gardens, sitting areas or little libraries, front porches, decks and patios, pedestrian orientation and scale, to a criteria of setbacks. The proposed district does, in fact, meet the 75% threshold. One of the district's property setback is actually 3 feet 2 inches, which is 3210 zenith. Next slide, please. This and the next slide are surveys to show the setback I am addressing. Yes, the front entry of 3210 zenith sits a few feet from the front property line. As staff has indicated, city ordinances regards the setback in R2B zoning district to be at least 20 feet from the front property line, not the middle of the street, the curb, the right-of-way, but the property line. The setback line is the minimum distance between the edge of your property and where the structure is. A fine example of this historic reduced setback is along Milwaukee Avenue. Slide 3, please. The criteria initially proposed refer to houses close to the street, small front yards, and other less tangible criteria. Changing the criteria to setback instead sets a quantifiable measurement. In the staff's report, the data of 3210 zenith does not take the setback from the property line. Including this property at 3210 zenith in the data collection by staff, the criterion of 75% or more residences in the proposed district are less than 20 feet. In fact, the average setback is approximately 15 feet 4 inches. In these times, we are acutely aware of distance. The difference here of approximately 4 feet 8 inches from the required 20-foot city setback ordinance in social distancing terms could be the difference between life and death. For the proposed district, it is an established, quantifiable criteria that meets the 75+% threshold. The criteria of modest size, lake cottage aesthetic, representative history of Midwestern 20th century architecture can be quantified with 2-story or less structures. 75% and more of the structures are 2-story or less. This design guideline would therefore be broad, since articulating style is unmeasurable. Yet the staff's report does refer to basic utilitarian derivations of high style architecture. Next slide, please. The criterion of small and dense lots is quantified by the non-cookie cutter sizing of the lots, of which over 75% are not identical. 120 years ago, the parcels were carved out, some square, some long and narrow, and others short and stout. A crazy patchwork quilt, the absence of conformity. The topography of the district is described as a gentle slope to the lake. The ridge of the Minnetonka Club abuts the southern end, but does not impede or foreshorten the lots of this district. The dense lots are enveloped between the hill, the swamp lake, and an old trail. This is a notable development pattern. That add-on, I believe that out of the Conservation Authority are its streets. Yet it is worth noting that both West 32nd Street and Ivy Lane are unusually narrow. They are both 40 feet in width. This is a contributing factor in the overall development pattern of this proposed district. Most city streets are in excess of 50 feet. I summarized criterion 1, the 10 criteria set out in this application. 8 have been melded into 3 presented, and each exceeds the 75% requirement. 2 other criteria already meet the 75% threshold: tree shaded lots at 88% and minimal impact by driveways, garages, and fences by 76%. Lastly, I'll speak about my own home. From the outside, it's a rambler or ranch, quite plain and unremarkable, yet inside is notable. Built and designed by a student of Frank Lloyd Wright, it is Usonian, but I describe to people as the Volkswagen of houses. Volkswagen translates into the people's car, thus the people's house. It is built with cheap, affordable materials, knotty pine walls and ceilings, cork flooring, and a fireplace of cement block. The spaces are flexible with living room, dining, and kitchen, basically all one big space. My husband wrote this: when a new house was built in the 1950s, the architect, a student of Frank Lloyd Wright, understood the life spirit of this community. He designed a Usonian home, one built for the common person, with common materials at a human scale. One might even say our conservation district is a Usonian village. In conclusion, I would like to comment on process. Being this is the first application for a conservation district, and therefore none have been established. To assure success with this tool, emphasize criterion quantifiable in the city's toolbox. Add the word somewhere in the process. Discourage the use of feeling criteria, and have staff review the draft with the applicants prior to submission. I am sure it is frustrating for you as well as for us to review these language modifications in this hearing. Per the guidelines, I realize that staff will create design guidelines after approval. Yet being the interpretation I present here is in keeping with the nature of the ordinance, measurable, quantifiable, with scale. So the application isn't thrown out with bathwater. I formally request you weigh these modified guidelines articulated here. The ordinance is a great value. It contributes to the long-term sustainability and vitality. Let's establish a process that preserves our heritage. I ask that you next hear Bob Roscoe, who was instrumental in establishing the ordinance, and then as well Tom Shia to speak. Thank you for these considerations, honorable commissioners.
Thank you for your comments, Meg. I think the other speakers will just need to go in the order of the queue. I see them signed up, so I think they should be in the queue. Any questions for the applicant, commissioners? Don't see any questions at this time. So with that, I will continue with the public hearing, and it looks like Thomas Shia is our next speaker. You can press *6. Thomas, are you there? Thought I heard somebody for a moment. Thomas? Nope, it looks like he's dropped the call. I'm going to move on to the next speaker. If he comes on, we'll circle back. The next speaker is Alan Campbell.
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Alan Campbell. I'm chair of the West Calhoun Neighborhood Council, and I live at 3220 West Bedeh-McCoska Parkway, apartment 201, Minneapolis 55416. The proposed conservation district is in our neighborhood, which, if City Council acts favorably on our request, will soon be the West McCoska neighborhood. In August 2019, our board voted unanimously in support of the conservation district designation. We do not see creation of a conservation district as a measure to block development near the light rail station, where 800 plus residential units have already been approved, but we see it as a measure to maintain diversity of housing types and preserve our neighborhood's architectural heritage. We believe that population density and the diversity of housing types are not mutually exclusive, but rather that a diversity of housing options and price ranges are essential to a healthy urban environment. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. It sounds like Thomas Shia is back on the line. Thomas, if you could press *6.
Can you hear me, folks?
Yes.
All right, I apologize. Technical error on my end. All right, my name is Tom Shia, S-H-I-A-H. I live at 3343 Ivy Lane, which is in the conservation district that's proposed before you today. My concern is not so much about the design considerations, the setbacks, the gardens, and everything else that Ms. Forney addressed. But my concern is using the 2040 comprehensive plan as a basis for the support of the denial in this case. Now, I know that in the actual report prepared by Mr. Smalley, he addressed the design criteria, but I think the 2040 comprehensive plan is permeating this whole process. And there's no doubt, I think it's already been addressed, that the planned conservation district that's before you, it's at odds with the 2040 plan, especially because of its designation as a, quote, transit 10 zoning. And we all know that what that means is that right now, I believe it's R2, and even though the plan has been adopted, that requires it to be designated as transit 10 and 10-story buildings. But to use that as a basis for denial at this stage, in my opinion, is premature. because this plan or this request for the conservation district, it was filed back in July. It was before the plan was actually adopted by the city council, and I believe that occurred on October 25th, 2019. And the policies that are set forth in that plan, they have an effective date of January 1, 2020. But most important, and this is the basis of my observation here today on behalf of the people in the proposed district, the plan has not been implemented yet. In fact, it's my understanding that the actual zoning that's contemplated, or I should say the change in zoning that's contemplating, that has not occurred, and it's on the table for sometime in November, if it even actually does get changed. So my point is this: at this juncture, if anybody is using the plan, the 2040 plan, as a basis for denial, it's premature, it's inappropriate, and in my opinion, it's discriminatory. And one final note is this: it's my understanding that there are other plans and proposals that are being considered by both the City Council and the Planning Commission that don't conform to the 2040 plan. So the bottom line is this: at this stage, if anybody is using the nonconformity with the 2040 comprehensive plan, I believe it is premature and inappropriate. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Tom. The next speaker in the queue is Chris Meyer. Chris, can you press *6?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep, my name is Chris Meyer. My address is 601 6th Street Southeast. I'm on the Park Board and the Planning Commission, but I'm speaking just on my own behalf today, and wanted to urge you again to reject this application because it is a clear attempt to exempt this neighborhood from the 2040 plan. So we're responding just to the previous commenter. The problem, the 2040 plan isn't the basis for rejecting this. The basis for rejecting this should be that the motive for applying for it was to exempt themselves from it. And that was made clear in the commentary at the September 2019 meeting, where you had people coming to say apartments are not neighborhoods, and it's trying to oppose density in their neighborhood. And it was also reiterated at the last planning committee of the whole for the Planning Commission, where the applicant said, if we weren't going to support the conservation district, would this be asked for us to downzone the area, which is very unlikely to happen because it is right next to a light rail station and a grocery store and lots of other amenities that make it appropriate for development. But it just seems so clear that that's what the real objective is. It's about exempting their neighborhood. And if the HPC does that, it would send a really terrible message that, wealthy, privileged neighborhoods can, bypass the process, whereas poorer neighborhoods who don't, know all the process wouldn't be able to do that. So I really urge you to reject this application today. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Chris. The next speaker in the queue is William Marshall. William, if you're there, could you press *6?
Yep,
I can hear you.
Can you hear me? So, yep. My name is William Marshall. I live at 1065 Thomas Avenue South. And so I'd like to start off my comments by responding to Ms. Forney's comments earlier. So first of all, we cannot make city policy on an emotional basis. She talked about knowing as a realtor that people buy homes for emotional reasons. That is no reason to make a citywide policy. Furthermore, just because you and your neighbors emotionally feel your neighborhood is deserving of a conservation district doesn't mean that it is. And do not be fooled by her statistics. In fact, in the staff report, only 28% of the houses are below 2 stories. Ms. Forney claimed that over 75% were. We all know that 28% of the homes being below 2 stories is not sufficient for the conservation district status, one of many metrics on which it fails. Furthermore, this neighborhood is not unique. It is, in fact, very close to many of the neighborhoods in Minneapolis in character. And as the previous caller stated, this reads as an attempt to exempt this neighborhood from the 2040 plan and vision for the future of our city. One more response to Ms. Forney directly. Respectfully, the staff report did use quantifiable data. The fact is it didn't turn out how you liked it, so you tried to modify the guidelines in order to make your neighborhood fit in the conservation district. That is a terrible precedent to set. Like I said, this area is not for the common man, as Ms. Forney was saying. It has a higher than average median income. It is a rich neighborhood. It is a nice neighborhood, but that does not make it worthy of a conservation district. Finally, I'd like to just say that I think this proposal should be denied for 3 reasons. The first is that it hurts the city's plan, which has already been adopted, and we cannot allow neighborhoods and areas that believe themselves to be better than others in the city to opt out of a comprehensive plan for the future of our city for all residents. Secondly, we cannot allow applicants to change the criteria for what makes a conservation district in order to make their neighborhood a conservation district. Thirdly, and lastly, and most importantly, this neighborhood does not even meet the existing criteria at all to become a conservation district. The fact that it is even up for consideration after the staff report is really, I think, quite terrible. And I, again, urge you to reject this neighborhood's conservation district status so that we can have a better future Minneapolis for all of our residents. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, William. The next speaker in the queue is Alex Burns. Alex, if you could press *6.
Hello.
I heard you for a moment.
Can you hear?
Yes.
Okay, sounds good. Hello, commissioners. My name is Alex Burns. I live at 2457 Lindale Avenue South. And I am testifying to talk about the environmental consequences of this proposal. I chair the Land Use and Transportation Committee of the Sierra Club North Star chapter. And my background is in biology and natural resource management. And I've spent the past few years doing environmental organizing and activism here in Minneapolis. And I care deeply about the future of our shared planet and as well as the health and well-being of my neighbors. And one of the challenges that the environmental movement is facing is greenwashing, which is the process of conveying a false impression that something is environmentally friendly in an attempt to mask the actual impacts or intentions of that thing. And I would characterize the proposal before you as an example of greenwashing. This conservation district is not in the best interest of sustainability. I believe it to be a thinly veiled attempt to create exceptions for a few well-off property owners and friends of the applicant in an attempt to bypass the comprehensive plan. Transportation, mostly from car traffic, is the top source of carbon pollution in Minnesota. And as has been mentioned earlier, dense transit-oriented development is one of the best tools we have to reduce driving, to reduce emissions, and to improve air quality. And that's not even to mention the impacts on like wildlife habitat and urban sprawl and whatnot. And again, as was mentioned, a few blocks away from the proposed district, a new light rail stop is being constructed. And it doesn't make any sense from an environmental standpoint to lock in low density land use at this location. I think it would be quite harmful. And for these reasons, I encourage you to vote no. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Alex. I think that is our full list of speakers who are signed up, but I'd like to open this up to any other speakers who may be in the queue. If you could provide your name and address and press *6 so we know if there's somebody else in the queue? Clerk, is it possible to confirm if there are any other speakers in the queue?
Chair Sundberg, my IT help is looking into that. Oh, there he posted just there that there are no more speakers.
No more
Thank you.
speakers. Okay. Thank you, everybody who came to speak. I will close the public hearing then and open this up to commissioner discussion. I just wanted to start by thanking the applicant. I realize that homeowners put a lot of time and energy into this application, and that as the first conservation district we're really getting to dive into, regardless of the outcome, I think this has been really a useful process. I appreciate Meg's feedback on the process because I think it will impact any future conservation districts that do move forward. This was a bit of a trial, and I think that staff also put a lot of time and energy into this, and the public engagement and everything, and I appreciate everybody's effort and in this exploration of figuring out what a conservation district in our city might look like. And with that, commissioners, any thoughts on this application? Commissioner Stady.
Hi, thank you. I'd like to make a motion to, deny the establishment of the IV Zenith 32nd Street Conservation District.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Commissioner Sandbolt, I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Sandbolt. Further discussion. I guess I'd like to make it clear that at least when I read the application, and having actually sat in on the public engagement for this district, that although it is a lovely neighborhood with very cute houses, that I guess to me it also didn't quite rise to what I was hoping for a conservation district in terms of the consistency through the district, but that I don't see this as invalidating the idea of conservation districts. I think they're a valuable tool when we find the right place to do one, and that it allows a grassroots aspect that our historic districts don't allow. Commissioner Howard.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. I think that this has been a really good way to approach the conservation district review process. I truly appreciate the neighborhood coming forward and like you said, putting a lot of time and effort into this. I'm just having a hard time seeing what makes this unique, rare. Our guidelines specifically say qualities that display innovation, rarity, or uniqueness, and I'm not seeing that even with the revised information that Meg Forney is proposing, the revised criteria. I'm not seeing something that's a cohesive, identifiable setting that would make a case for a conservation district. I am concerned about the way that the report talks about the 2040 plan, because I think it's important for not just us as preservation commissioners to understand that conservation districts are part of the 2040 plan, but it's important for the Planning Commission to understand that, and it's mostly important for the citizens to understand that. conservation districts are part of the 2040 plan, and we're supposed to be reviewing them and looking at them, and they can be part of the 2040 plan. As it's written, it makes it look as though that's not the case. So I would encourage staff that for future applications that we really look at that, the policies that do talk about conservation districts, and include that in the staff analysis. I think that it's important to reinforce those policies exist, and reinforce that the need is that the conservation districts actually meet the criteria. And in this case, it met the first criteria, but not the second.
Thank you, Commissioner Howard. I think that is an important distinguishing feature. Commissioner Mack?
I don't know if I'm appearing because I've gotten off screen now somehow.
We can see you.
Okay. But I'd like to speak against the motion. I was involved in the creation of the conservation ordinance, and just kind of looking at the big picture, this is just the sort of place that the ordinance was designed for. It's not about high styles. It's about places where the architecture and the fabric don't quite rise to the level of a historic district, but have commonalities and a sense of fabric and scale, and that's what I see here that is worth preserving. And I have to just think about the people who are in the neighborhood, and the comments of Alan Campbell of Echo, West Calhoun, that there's a need for different kinds of housing, and these are not expensive houses. They're not cheap houses, but there is a need for different kinds of housing in our city neighborhoods. It really adds to the diversity of the experience, and there's a lot of development around here. You can see the traffic, and I'm, have to take a little bit of issue with the Sierra Club guy, because the density of housing is not reducing the amount of traffic. And so I kind of worry about the impact on the lake and the parks, and the whole area of overdevelopment. And I think that's kind of looking at the big picture, what the conservation district should be about. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Mack. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Commissioners? Okay, well, don't see any, so I think we can keep the process moving along. I appreciate that it is always difficult when we're making these sorts of decisions, and that I, at least, am really hopeful of seeing another district come to us as a possibility. I agree that it's not necessarily an easy cut and dry situation for any of these. So with that, would the clerk please call the roll on the motion?
Bjornberg.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Ward.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Nay.
Sambolt.
Aye.
Stady.
Aye.
Reich.
Aye.
Berg. Sundberg.
Aye.
Thank you. That's 8 yay, 1 nay.
Thank you. That motion passes. Our last item is number 6, 1505 Central Avenue Northeast, Ward 1, a National Register nomination. The staff report will be presented by Sheila Vemmer.
Good afternoon, or good evening now, Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners. My name is Sheila Vemmer, and I'm a Senior City Planner in the Historic Preservation section of CPED. I will be presenting a National Register of Historic Places nomination for CLG, Heritage Preservation Commission comment. The property is the Aaron Carlson Corporation building located at 1505 Central Avenue Northeast. Next slide, please. The City of Minneapolis has recognized the property as a potential historic resource since it was identified in the 2004 Northeast Minneapolis Historic Resources Inventory. The consultants, Mead and Hunt, listed the property as potentially meeting local designation Criterion 1 for its continued association with manufacturing and lumber milling operations in Northeast Minneapolis, and Criterion 4 is an intact example of late 19th and early 20th century manufacturing complex, which exemplifies the manufacturing process. Next slide, please. Located in the Northeast Park neighborhood within an area of concentrated industry in the city's Northeast neighborhood, the main factory building of the Aaron Carlson Corporation complex is a utilitarian-style factory constructed by the Carlson Corporation in phases between 1905 and 1928. A 3-story warehouse was constructed in 1910 and a 2-story lumber shed was constructed in 1905. Those were connected to the southeast end of the main factory building by 1912 and 1928, respectively. By 1928, a 2-story warehouse addition had expanded to the complex further southeast, and a spur track had been constructed along the east and north edges of the site, and approximately half of that track is extant. Following a fire in 1943, the factory constructed a new office, 2 stories, and a lumber storage, 1-story addition to the northwest of the original factory. The additional storage buildings are located on the factory complex site. One is a wood-framed lumber shed with sections dating to 1910, 1928, and 1950, and a metal-clad shed-style building that was added to the interior of the site in 1987. Apart from the 1987 metal-clad shed and the 1950 addition to the West Lumber Shed, all segments of the existing complex are contributing resources. In summary, there are 2 contributing buildings on the site, the factory building with all its connected properties, and the wood-frame lumber shed, and 1 non-contributing building, the 1987 shed. I know it's a lot to take in. 1505 Central Avenue Northeast has served as the headquarters, lumber mill, and production facility of the Aaron Carlson Corporation since 1905 until last year. Next slide, please. The building's period of significance begins in 1940 when the company entered into a contract with the U.S. military to produce wood components for pontoon bridges and ends in 1945 with the end of World War II. The nomination states that Aaron Carlson Corporation is historically significant under National Register Criterion A, industry, for its association with the wartime lumber industry in Minneapolis. Is the only Minneapolis lumber mill to win the Army-Navy E Award for its contribution to the war effort through its manufacture of pontoon bridge components during World War II. Go Navy! Founded in Minneapolis in 1891, the Aaron Carlson Sash and Door Company built a reputation for custom millwork. The company's skill in finely crafted wood-building components and its proximity to a rail line made it a natural fit for the production and shipping of a pontoon bridge components. These components were shipped to troops in the European theater, France, Belgium, and Germany, and the Pacific theater, Burma, China, and India. In 2019, Aaron Carlson sold its Central Avenue factory. Though several small buildings were demolished and a new storage building constructed in the 1980s, the site looks as much as it did 70 years ago and continues to communicate the history and significance of the Aaron Carlson Sash and Door Company, the original name. Next slide, please. Despite alterations following the building's period of significance, the property maintains good historic integrity from its period of significance, 1940 to 1945. The Aaron Carlson Corporation site is an excellent example of a late 19th and early 20th century manufacturing complex, which exemplifies the manufacturing process. Staff recommends the Heritage Preservation Commission adopt this CPED report, approve the National Register nomination for the Aaron Carlson Corporation at 1505 Central Avenue Northeast, and direct staff to transmit a letter summarizing the report to the State Historic Preservation Officer. This concludes my staff report, and I'm here for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. Are there any questions for staff? I don't see any questions at this time. This is not a public comment item, so with that, I will open it up to commissioner discussion. Are there any concerns, comments on the application? Commissioner Howard.
I feel like I'm starting off every conversation. But I just wanted to say I really thought this was a really interesting story, and I appreciated reading it. I'm not the type of preservation person who goes for recognizing significance for properties just because they've received a gold star. I think that the case for this property is compelling even without that honorific. The fact that it got the E award is great, but the story itself is compelling for me.
Thank you, Commissioner Howard. I also found this to be a really compelling application. Commissioner Bjornberg.
I just want to say I was super excited to see this. I see this building constantly and I'm always like, oh man, I love it. And so getting to read about it, I was like, man, this is very exciting. So support it.
Thank you, Commissioner Bjornberg. Are there other comments or perhaps a motion?
This is Howard. I'll make a motion to adopt the CPED report, approve the National Register nomination for the Aaron Carlson Corporation at 1505 Central Avenue Northeast, and direct staff to transmit a letter summarizing the report to the State Historic Preservation Officer.
Thank you, Commissioner Howard. Is there a second?
Bjornberg seconds.
Thank you, Commissioner Bjornberg. Any further discussion? I don't see any. I hope we're all very excited about this. It's always fun to see another National Register nomination come past our desks. So with that, would the clerk please call the roll on the motion?
Bjornberg.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Aye. Howard.
Howard.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Aye.
Mack.
Aye.
Sandbolt.
Aye.
Beatty,
Aye.
Van der Eyck,
Aye.
Sundberg.
Aye.
That's 9 ayes.
Thank you. The motion passes.
Thank you very much, commissioners.
Yeah.
And go Navy, beat Army.
Thanks, Sheila. That concludes our public hearing items, our discussion items. Are there any announcements? Andrea, are there any staff announcements? Yes, Andrea
Yes,
Burke.
sorry. Thank you. Yeah, I just have one small announcement. I just wanted to say thank you to all the commissioners who submitted their request to be included on a list to the State Historic Preservation Office for a CLG funding to attend the Forum Conference, the virtual conference in Tacoma. I have submitted that request to the State Historic Preservation Office. I believe the deadline was just yesterday, so I don't expect a response yet, but just to let everybody know that I've submitted it, and as soon as I hear a response, I will report back to those requesting to be on that list. But that is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, are there any other announcements?
I just have a question. The retreat, is that still on for the 13th?
That is still on for the 13th. I know I will be working with the clerk to get that set out and scheduled. We set those up similar to committee of the whole meetings. So while it is not a public meeting, the public is invited to participate, and we post agendas in advance and get it on the calendar in advance. So stay tuned for more information on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. If it would be possible for you to send the list of discussion topics out to the commission so we can see if anybody has something to add, I think that would be valuable to do. I'm not sure if you've heard from anybody. I know I have like a mental list, but I'm not sure what's already on the list. So if it would be possible for you to just send out the plan.
Yeah, I can do that.
Thanks. Any other items? I don't see any. So with that, we've completed all items on the agenda for this meeting. There being no other business, without objection, I will declare this meeting adjourned. The next regular meeting of the HPC is August 11th, 2020. Thank you, everyone.